and welcome to Fiction Fans, a podcast where we read books and other words too. I'm Lily.
And I'm Sarah.
And Sarah, before we get into our planned discussion for the evening, what's something great that happened lately?
I fixed my circuit breaker, and by I mean my stepfather fixed my circuit breaker, so that using my microwave no longer trips the circuit every fifth time I try to use it, and I don't have to go outside to flip the switch. And I can actually set my the hour on the microwave, and I don't have to worry about it resetting every time the microwave goes off. It's very exciting.
Shit, I would have to flip that breaker every day.
I was flipping it. It wasn't every day, but it was basically every week, multiple times a week. And it would go off, right? Because I'd use my microwave. So I would go off and reset it. But there was some kind of cooling down period that it required, because if I tried to use my microwave immediately after resetting it, it would inevitably trip it again.
That's so weird.
It was horrible. I dealt with that for 2 years.
That's too long.
It was too long, but it's fixed now. So that's my good thing. I'm so happy.
That is
life is
fantastic.
So much better.
Just microwave everything.
Yeah. And even if it goes off, now I can reset the breaker from inside. I don't have to go outside to reset the breaker, which I haven't had to do.
Did he move your circuit box?
No, but he put in a new outlet that lets you trip it from the outlet.
GFI or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. But I haven't had to do that because he fixed the circuit. I think he replaced the circuit breaker.
My good thing is not house related for once.
What is your good thing, Lily?
I am a drama queen and took an entire week off for one dentist appointment.
I thought you just took the week off for a staycation.
Yeah, except I'm using the staycation to go to the dentist and get minor surgery done. That's a really dramatic way of saying I got my neck split on taken out. But I like minor surgery better. And also probably taxes at some point. The week's not over yet. I have more time.
So that's not so much a staycation as you took time off to do personal work.
Yeah. But I'd rather do personal work when that's the only responsibility I have than trying to make it fit around also a 9-to-5.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Also, this was the first time I've been to a dentist in over a decade, and I don't have any cavities. Maybe that should be my good thing.
That's a very good thing.
I'm proud of myself. Brushing my teeth. That's maybe a really low bar. I was prepared for very bad news.
I mean, I've had bad teeth, and I see my dentist more than once a decade, so you should be proud of yourself.
Yeah, I actually think I shouldn't be proud of myself and should just be thanking my lucky stars. Because at this point, I don't think it's me, or I don't think it's my actions that is protecting my teeth. I think it is 100% luck and genetics.
Quite possibly.
Yeah. But I'll take it. So I guess my good thing is not going to the dentist. It's having been to the dentist.
Not having to go again.
And for 6 whole months.
While.
Yeah. Well, speaking of dentistry, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking Shindig cider, which is a California cider from San Luis Obispo. They followed me on Instagram, so I thought I would buy their cider. It's quite good, actually.
Wait, they followed you before you bought their cider?
They followed me before I bought their cider.
Do you post pictures of cider? This is bad. I do not go on Instagram. I'm sorry.
Not really. I mean, I follow Blindwood Cider because they're local and wonderful and I love them. And there is a new cider pub that opened close to me, and I follow them. And those are the only 2 cider related. Well, and I follow Ben's Cider company.
But that's literature. That's not even really cider at that point.
I mean, I follow the actual cider company, though.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I'm telling them that their business is actually
It's actually,
literature
yes.
industry now. Yeah.
Yes. They're part of Bookstagram and they just don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't post about cider that often. And I don't follow a lot of cider things. But either way, they followed me. And so I thought I would buy their cider.
Their plan worked.
So it was an effective marketing tactic. Yeah. What are you drinking, Lily?
Oh, God, my answer is not as good as yours.
No, but it's funnier.
It is. That's true. I am drinking a Bud Light Seltzer Sour in the flavor Blue Raspberry. It tastes like it's designed for a 16-year-old.
Man, that's harsh.
It's watered down sour candy. It's not bad. It's just like, what are you doing?
I mean, that doesn't sound pleasant, to be perfectly honest.
It's not bad. I've had worse seltzers. Let's say that. It's pretty sweet. I don't think you would like it.
No, I would not like it.
I don't mind it. Literally, I think I should buy these for Halloween because that's the mindset I'm in at Halloween. But in the spring, not so much.
Well, that's certainly a drink that you are drinking.
It is. Is this where I admit that I work in an office that has a stocked mini fridge? It is, isn't it?
I worked in an office that had a stocked mini fridge.
It's very nice.
We're moving offices, so I don't think they're taking the mini fridge with us.
Who even works in an office anymore?
That too. So
my boss ordered these just to find out. No one else likes them, so I took a few home because I thought it would be funny for this.
You were not wrong.
Yeah. Since this is technically a book podcast, have you read anything lately? Anything good is the caveat, or anything.
I actually have. This episode, we are recording while it is still March, if not for much longer. This episode will not come out in March.
No, that would be very difficult.
That would be very difficult. But this episode isn't coming out until late April.
Okay.
But so I read The Archive by Dan Fitzgerald as part of March of the Sequels.
You got to the feather dragons.
I did, and they were wonderful.
Yeah.
Dan, we need to have a talk about how it ends. I don't know. Have you finished it yet?
No.
Okay. Then I will leave it there. This is, I think, the only book that I've managed to read for March of the Sequels, despite my best intentions. But we had 1,600 pages that we had to read for podcast reading in a week.
March was rough.
Yeah, that kind of killed all of my personal reading time.
Also, aren't you just proving, is it Sue?
Yeah, Sue Baby.
Aren't you just proving Sue's point that nobody reads sequels? So you're welcome, Sue.
No, but
you're right. You are right all along. It is
March of the Sequels is to celebrate sequels.
Because it's hard to get people to read them.
Well, I mean, I would be reading.
Every cause needs an enemy, Sarah.
And you are that enemy.
Oh, I am definitely the enemy. I think I straight up said Song of Earth and
Blood and Stone. Yeah, you said you weren't going to read the sequel because it was too long.
I loved that book, and I was like, yeah, but I'm not reading anymore. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm really sad, though, because India Holton's sequel to The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels came out in March, and the final book in Sherwood Smith's Phoenix Feather series came out in March. And I was like, I'm going to read these, and I have not had a chance to read them.
You have time. You could read them all tomorrow.
No.
So who's the real bad guy?
Work, because if it weren't for work, I could read them. So we'll blame my employer.
There we go.
Have you read anything?
God, no. The episode that came out today came out so goddamn late. I've been scrambling for a couple of weeks. Yeah, we skipped a week too. Yeah. Shit's been wild. It's okay. I'm on top of it. Just barely though.
This is where I make the confession that I read this book, the book that we're Anthracite by Matt Thomas, which is what we're actually here to talk about. I read it 2.5 weeks ago because we were supposed to record this episode 2.5 weeks ago. And that did not happen.
Nope.
And I have not reread it. because lots of other books were on the schedule. So my recollection of this book is a little faded from the other reading that I've done.
That's okay. That just means every time we disagree, everyone can assume that I'm right because I read it today.
I guess that's just what's going to have to happen.
Actually, though, starting from the very top, I have to say that I was wrong. When we were discussing this book as we were reading it, I complained that it's listed as cyberpunk, and it didn't feel cyberpunk at all to me. But in order to actually say that on the podcast, I looked up the definition of cyberpunk. And indeed, this book checks all of those boxes. So Sarah was right. Just kidding.
Yeah. I do feel that this book is more of like an action adventure novel that just has a cyberpunk setting rather than a book that focuses on the cyberpunk aspects of where that action takes place.
I do really like that distinction between the genre and the setting, because a lot of the boxes that this book checks for the genre are almost mentioned in passing. I mean, it is the setting, but that's not where the bulk of the conflict and action are involved.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about off the podcast, and you were saying that cyberpunk, by definition, is a dystopian future run by corporations over government that focuses on wealth disparity. And all of that is mentioned, but it's definitely not the focus of the novel.
Well, it kind of is, except that the main character is dealing entirely with the wealthy elite, which to me, like just my personal interaction with the genre is not at all where cyberpunk genre tends to focus. It focuses on the people fighting to survive while the wealthy elite are untouched above them. Having a cyberpunk story set on the other side felt so wrong. From my experiences, I'm not complaining about that. You know what I mean?
It just wasn't what you were expecting.
No, like I said, I honestly was like, this is sci-fi, not cyberpunk, until I actually looked up the definition. And I was like, well, okay. But, oh, that's a spoiler. No. Nope. All right.
Moving on.
I do like saying that it's a cyberpunk setting, though. Action adventure genre.
It's very definitely a cyberpunk setting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It would make a great action adventure movie.
Oh, dude. There's so many like hover car chases, and the one motorcycle chase, like not motorcycle, but like hover cycle spaceship thingy.
Yeah.
I would watch that.
Yeah, I would watch that too. I did have a little bit of an issue with this book in the sense that there was so much going on, though, that often, like, there were a lot of aspects to the book that could have had a huge impact on the plot and character motivations and how they reacted to things that were brought up once and then kind of just used superficially and didn't end up having that impact that I wanted them to have. Like, for example...
Oh, I think we decided that's a spoiler. Oh, no, we decided it's not a spoiler.
Yeah, we decided it wasn't.
Matter.
Yeah, we decided it wasn't a spoiler because it doesn't actually end up having any impact whatsoever. But Gwen, who is I hesitate to call her a love interest, but she is
well, the main character is interested.
The main character is interested, that's for sure. But she is a badass mercenary who kicks ass. And there's talk about her being a test tube baby and like that test tube babies face discrimination. And then it just doesn't go anywhere ever. And that could have been really cool. And that would have been a great way to explore some of the more like cyberpunk aspects of the setting.
Yeah, the intersection between technology and identity, to me, is what makes cyberpunk really, really cool. And it was just sort of dangled in front of me and then snatched away.
Yeah. So I would have liked to see that either explored further or just not mention because it didn't make any difference to the plot?
Well, there's a lot of stuff that sort of is just being shot at us at 100 miles per hour in this book. And I say that with the very important caveat that a lot of them really made me laugh genuinely out loud. Most of my notes are just LOL in all caps.
It's a very funny book.
But then some of the references just completely fell flat. And that could very well be that I laughed at the references that I am soft towards, right? Because like I don't know every pop culture thing. So maybe the ones that I recognized but didn't have nostalgia for didn't land with me. That could be the case. It also could be that there were just so many that you could not emotionally keep up.
For me, I didn't mind number of references. I thought that it was as I said, a very funny book, and I wasn't like exhausted in any way by the number of references, but
no, they just didn't all make me laugh.
Oh, no, I mean, they didn't.
And I think that very likely could just be that's because I didn't get them.
Yeah. Yeah. They didn't all make me laugh, but I didn't need them to. It was more all of the plot elements that were thrown at the reader.
Well, there's a lot going on in this book.
Yeah, there's a lot that's going on.
And for, I would say about the first half, it feels like we're just doing joke and then get a car chase to the next joke. And then we have a car chase to the next joke. And I mean, the jokes are landing. The car chases are cool. Like we said, I would totally watch this. But confession, this book was very hard for me to read. As I mentioned, I read this today. I started it on time. It took me that long to read it, which is 100% just a me thing. I don't know. The style didn't jive with me or something. I can't really articulate it, which is not good for a podcast about articulating my emotions about books. I think some of it was the first person perspective, which is a established me problem.
That's a you problem.
But it's a biased first person narrator, which I actually really loved. Like Kevin, the main character, is so obviously filtering what he's
unreliable.
Seeing. Yeah, I love that. That's so funny. That justifies a first person narrator in my mind. I did still ask myself, but who are you talking to? That's me. That's fine. But yeah, I don't know. There was a lot going on and a lot of it stuck. There are so many parts of this book that I loved, but it didn't feel strung together quite right for me.
I think for me, and I had a little bit of trouble reading it as well. I think in my case, that was because I was reading it as an ebook. And there was so much going on that I needed to have the physical copy because I just have a much better attention span when I'm reading a physical copy versus when I'm reading on my phone. So that's a me problem. That's not a book problem.
Yeah. I think we both had some different me problems.
Yeah. But I mean, that being said, I did really enjoy the book. Like, I thought it was funny. I liked the character development that Kevin goes through. I had some frustrations with Kevin in the beginning, but he does grow as a character.
But we're supposed to.
Yeah.
Like, that's actually, is this in the spoiler section?
We have a note for it about.
Okay, so we'll talk about that later.
So we'll talk
because I want to get
yeah.
into it. But the Kevin character, like, there are a lot of characters in this book that are supposed to be assholes. And that definitely comes across. But there are so many assholes that it does get stressful is maybe not quite the right word.
It would have been nice to be able to root for a character earlier in the plot.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
The humor did carry it for quite, like, I mean, obviously I finished the book and I would have, even if it wasn't for the podcast. So, you know, the humor does a lot of the heavy lifting in the first half, I would say.
And I have a note about that too, but we've decided that we were going to cover it in the spoiler section. So I can't talk about, but there were things that carried it for me, spoilery things that carried it for me too.
There are a lot of good things in this book, but you have to get to them. And I didn't have enough hints that we were going to get there. And I think that is the least spoilery way we can say it until we can get into the nitty gritty. Okay, so the Welshitude of this novel is so strong that we need to invent the word Welshitude.
That was one of the things that I really, really enjoyed about this book, to be honest, was just how Welsh it is. Not that I have any idea of Welsh culture beyond one visit to Cardiff, like a number of years ago, a weekend visit. But it brought me so much joy.
I mean, I assume the writer's Welsh, right? He has to be, right?
Probably. I gotta
Google this, because if he's not, I don't know how I feel about that.
I'm based on this book, I assume that Thomas is Welsh. All I know is that he reached out to us like last July asking if we would be interested in reading the book. So sorry it's taken us so long to actually cover it on the podcast.
Oh, if he's not actually Welsh, we have to cut this because that was really mean.
What does his Twitter say? His location is the Lost Lands. He has the Welsh. No, I guess that's just the dragon from Anthracite.
But the dragon from Anthracite is like an adaptation of the Welsh flag, right?
Yes. What does his author bio? He grew up in Port Talbot, South Wales.
Okay, excellent. Now I can stand by my statement that if he's not Welsh, that makes this book really cringy.
No, I think he is Welsh.
I need it to come from a sincere place because I cannot parse what is a joke and what is just slang.
I thought it came from a sincere place.
Oh no, it has, like I'm saying, it needs to be because it's all over my head. And so it, like, just as a reader, I need to be able to trust the author. If I found out the author was just Googling shit, I would be like, oh no, now I have less of an idea than I did before. But like, okay, there's a hell of a lot of slang in this book, and it was great. It was really fun. But I'm pretty sure some of it was made up. And I don't know where the line is.
We have a note specifically about how some of the Welsh characters spelled fucked in the dialogue, or how it was spelled when they spoke, which was FFWCED. And I did some cursory Googling, and I did find a Facebook comment that used it with that spelling, but it was below a result for Anthracite on that first page of Google. So I don't know how common it is.
And that's something that I assumed was a joke, and maybe I was wrong. But then there were complete bonkers phrases like chopsy bugger, which I assumed was just a Welsh thing. Maybe that was a joke. I was both amused, baffled, and suspicious the entire time, just at a linguistic level.
Googling chopsy bugger first in particular.
I know bugger is a word.
No. But chopsy bugger, like the phrase, Googling the phrase, I get hits.
So my instinct was right.
I think that is just a thing. And one of those is from Wales Online. So maybe that is yet another Welsh thing.
So, but that's my point. I got the impression that some of this was comedic effect and some of it was genuine linguistic use. And I don't know where the line is.
But that was kind of the fun of it.
Yeah.
Is not knowing. I did look up leek daiquiris as well, because those are mentioned quite a lot in this book, to see if there was a recipe for a leek daiquiri. And the first page of Google didn't show me anything, but it did show me a recipe for a rum cocktail with leek and balsamic vinegar.
Yeah, Pinterest pulled through.
Yeah, but I think that rum cocktail is probably a little bougier than anything in this book.
Honestly, I was imagining just like a highball glass with a leek stuck in it.
Just pureed leek with some alcohol.
No, I was imagining it like a garnish.
Oh, I was thinking, given how much he dislikes the taste of it, I was thinking that it was actually like involved pureeing.
I mean,
like that you were drinking that leek.
That's funnier conceptually, but mine is funnier visually.
Well, why not both? You could have something that's, leek infused, very leaky, and then garnished with leek.
That's true. That's very true.
It's not a one or the other situation.
More leek.
I think some of the characters in this book think that that's not a bad thing.
Okay, speaking of word usage, I mentioned earlier that one of the points of this book is that many of the characters are big, huge jerks that you're not actually supposed to like, including, frankly, the main character for a large portion of the book. And so when jerks behave like jerks, you dislike the character, and that's entirely on purpose. And I 100% got the vibe. But there was an awful lot of it, and there was a lot of extremely rude language. And I'm not talking about fucked spelled with a W. That's just funny. But actually, like, I think like these offensive. Are slurs.
Yeah.
You should skip forward maybe 30 seconds if you don't want to hear the examples. But I'm talking about words like trannies, shysters, and retarded, which are words that are why? You don't need to use those words to prove to me that a character is an asshole.
I think once or twice you can use them to show that a character is an asshole, but you certainly don't need to use them quite as much.
I don't think any one word was used more than once, but there were just so many.
It's the combination of them, yeah.
And it wasn't just one character. That's the other thing. If it was one character that just uses slurs all the time, okay, yeah, that's the asshole character who uses slurs. But I went back and checked, and at least one is in dialogue by not the main character, and another one is in the narration itself. So the main character's mental dialogue. And it's just a lot. It was just a lot. I did a lot of yikes comments.
We are not supposed to be rooting for these characters, though.
No, it's true, but you do want me to read the book. Presumably. The theoretical you know what I mean. And that just makes it hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it put a bad taste in my mouth, and none of them are even slurs that have been used against me. I can't even imagine what it would be like reading a book that's so lighthearted and funny and then going, oh,
yeah.
But again, the point is that you dislike the characters. I don't know. It's a fine line. It feels bad, but it's supposed to, so I'm not really sure. Good job, I guess. You offended me on purpose.
So the summary for this book is: deadbeat Kevin Jones finds himself kidnapped to an alternative reality where Wales is the single global superpower. Abducted from his mundane existence by the mysterious Gwen, she tells him there are forces seeking his destruction. He has to run or die. It turns out Kevin's story holds the key to why all worlds but ours turn out the way they do. Pax Cambria. Featuring a host of mysterious characters, cheese on toast-based fast food, alt-right druids, and the deadly all-knowing Tafia, Anthracite begins the battle to address the woeful lack of Welsh-themed comedy cyberpunk. The fearsome Jones Corporation might run the world, but they have a dirty little secret they don't want to get out. Swansea has never looked more like near future LA. It's already got the rain. Well, LA doesn't have rain.
Unless that's a cyberpunk 2077 joke where everything is wet all the time.
It probably is. I'm sure it is. I actually think that the summary is a very accurate indication of what you get in the book.
Yeah, that summary is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I also did really love the druids. They were so ridiculous.
There was a lot to really enjoy about this book.
Yeah, it just felt really disparate. Like, I loved all of the pieces, but they didn't quite gel right for me. And all of that is based on the first half of the book. The ending is worth it. So I guess my answer to the question, why should you read this book, is if you're willing to laugh until you get to the payoff, then you should read this book.
If you want a lot of Welsh puns.
And some cyberpunk fiction that focuses on the Welsh global elite. To avoid spoilers, skip to 5444.
So now that we're in the spoiler section, I can talk about one of the reasons that I had confidence that there would be payoff with Kevin's character, because Kevin starts as pretty much a deadbeat, as the summary, describes. And he's not.
Isn't the term neat?
Neat?
Not in education, employment, or training. NEET.
Yes, that sounds right. I mean, that accurately describes him.
It's not an Americanism, but it's a very useful phrase. And it does apply.
Absolutely.
If that's a British thing and it's rude to use that to describe a Welsh person, I'm sorry. Just general blanket apology.
I've heard it in Japan. Anyway, not the point. It does accurately describe Kevin, who is pretty lame, not someone you really can cheer for that much.
Hey, is neat ever used to describe, like, trust fund babies? And why not? This is maybe a words are weird that needs research done.
I think it
Isn't
definitely
that interesting?
I think it definitely bears more research, yes. But going back to my point,
Sorry,
Kevin, which I keep trying to in a very meandering way get to. One of the things that made me feel like I could root for him, or that he would be growing as a character, is the fact that he visits his grandfather, who is in a senior citizens home, every week. And he does so willingly, without grumping about it. Like, he seems genuinely happy and excited to do that. And that was the little bit of like niceness that I needed to get past some of his other traits.
And I mean, a lot of his other traits are hilarious. Like, he's working on a comic book called The Windy Ninja, about, indeed, a ninja who farts a lot. And it is so ridiculously over the top, but also has those seeds of sincerity that I recognize in people that I have met. Like, I have met 100 people who are 1% Kevin, which all adds together to make Kevin absolutely absurd, but still grounded in reality in a very upsetting way.
Yeah, like he definitely seemed like a real person, a fully fledged human being.
I would say he feels familiar. I've never met anyone that bad. They probably exist, though. You're right. Another hilarious aspect is how he always assumes people are into him, which is definitely a personality trait who I have met.
Yes. But I think that Thomas does a really good job at kind of subverting that in this book, where I was definitely expecting, yes, Kevin is over the top and assuming that everyone is into him, especially that Gwen is into him. But I was definitely expecting that at the end of the book, by the time Kevin has matured, because he does mature and grow in the last half of the book, I was thinking that there would be some kind of romance aspect between the two of them, even if it was just like a goodbye kiss or something, because that's kind of like, that's the trope.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the storyline beat that I was expecting. And there's none of that. And that was brilliant.
Well, there's a ton of it, but it's all in Kevin's head.
Well, yes. I mean, it's all very one-sided, and that's fine. Like, I really enjoyed that because that was Kevin being delusional, and that was funny.
Yeah.
But it was
Gwen calls him kiddo the entire time,
Yeah.
and it's fantastic.
Like, I loved that trope was subverted in that way.
Oh, it's hard. Okay. This is not my complaint with first person perspective, but this is a complaint that I am going to blame on the first person perspective, which is that the female characters in this book are pretty one-dimensional. We get hints of Gwen in her dialogue where she, rolls her eyes at Kevin, but is quote unquote secretly enamored by him or whatever he thinks. And so I assume she has more going on than we see, but it's not on the page. The other character, though, is Kevin's mother, who, for the first half of the book, Kevin describes as, the classic harridan. Is that a word? Is that the word?
Is a word HARRIDAN.
Just the classic women nag, and then you find out that's because they're trying to get something extremely vital done. But that word nag has so much baggage, and the mother is definitely described as a nag who doesn't understand how important his work is, et cetera, et cetera. But we can read between the lines and see, oh, she's nagging you about bills because your grandfather's about to get kicked out of the retirement home. Like, very important stuff that he eventually comes to understand. And so as long as the mother is off screen, I assumed all of that was just affected by Kevin's narration. And so I was able to sort of not hand wave it, but I let myself read between the lines. But we do actually meet the mother on page. She gets kidnapped by, I'm going to refer to it as the mafia.
It's the Taffia.
The Taffia, the family corporation that runs Parallel Universe Wales and the world, which is Kevin's family. But in his own universe, they are just Welsh. I don't know. They're not a worldwide mafia organization, that's for sure. And his mom is so airheaded about the parallel universe thing. She thinks that his uncle, who's just like a weird scammer, has secretly been hiding a multi-million-dollar mansion all along. And that's where she is, even though she got taken through a portal that makes you it gives you, jet lag, basically. I think Kevin threw up the first time he went through it. And all of that just went over her head. And this is actual dialogue that she has on the page. And up until that point, I had assumed the dialogue was accurate and it was Kevin's narration that is biased. But then when you get the mother just so fucking disconnected, I couldn't give her the benefit of the doubt anymore, and that kind of sucked.
Well, I think there are two separate issues there. I think that one is that Kevin really is that biased in his perspective about things like quote unquote nagging and needing to pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's on Kevin. But I do think that her airheadedness is played up to the detriment of her character.
Yeah.
Like it's played up for laughs, but it does mean that we don't get any dimensionality to her.
No, and there's no other point in this book where I questioned the dialogue. You know what I mean? We have a biased narrator, and so all of the commentary is through that lens, but the dialogue always was what made it funny, because he'll say, oh, Gwen was looking at me like she's in love. And then she says, get your act together, kiddo. and so he's obviously disconnected, and the dialogue is what gave us that view. But then suddenly with the mother, I was going, well, maybe it's wrong. Maybe the dialogue is also biased. Maybe she's not this out of it and disconnected and useless, and just as useless as Kevin said through the entire first half of the book that I assumed was him being wrong. I don't know. I think the mom needed more. It was just really condescending. The way the mother was dealt with was really condescending, and I didn't think it was funny.
Yeah, I think that this is, again, an area where the book would have benefited from less is more.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no room in the story to give the mother any kind of depth beyond just comedic relief, which is a shame when the female characters are either the love interest or the mother.
Well, and again, if I was able to hand wave it away as being the narrator's perspective, I really liked the mom in the first half of the book until I saw her, and that's sucks.
Yeah.
And, Gwen, I wish we saw more of her, but that's because Kevin sees her as one-dimensional. And so again, I'm able to say, okay, she obviously has more going on. We just can't see it. And that's very obvious. So I'm okay with that personally as a reader. I don't need to see everything on the page. As long as the author clearly intends there to be more, I'm okay with filling in the blanks. And I think that really works with Gwen, even if I wanted to see more. But I got that there was stuff. The mom, it just didn't land. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you.
I guess the other female character was the librarian, who is a great example of a big ol' asshole who's supposed to be a big ol' asshole, and that worked. I hated every second with her.
I kind of really enjoyed her. I mean, not because I liked her as a person, but because she was an asshole in a funny way rather than a mean way. I mean, obviously it was
pretty mean.
It was unpleasant to Kevin, but it wasn't like an offensive way.
Oh, cheek pinching bothers me on a visceral level.
Oh. I don't think that people should do cheek pinching like in the real world, but I think as a trait for someone we're supposed to dislike, it's a good one.
I mean, it worked. I hated her. She also was a character that gave Kevin an opportunity for one of my favorite moments in the book. So we find out that the awful librarian, who does a lot of like casual physical assault, which I guess everyone else calls cheek pinching, is actually an operative from the parallel universe. It is some like very high-ranking military officer. And at one point, she is helping Kevin prepare, quote unquote, Kevin prepare for something he has to do. And she's giving him a lot of shit, like, where's your sense of professionalism? And Kevin very rightly says, I'm not being paid. I don't want to do this. I'm not a professional. And I think that was the first time that Kevin stands up for himself in a really satisfying, assertive way, instead of just whining about his circumstances. And that felt really good. That moment felt really good.
I think it does mark a turning point in his character development where he starts to kind of take control over his actions, and he's still doing things that he doesn't want to do, but he's at least making decisions for himself rather than just being drug along by the plot.
I loved, and we read these as ebooks, so I can say with confidence that it was the last 25% of the book. And you were right. The character changes, and I'm a character reader. I know that about myself. Like, that's what I'm here for. And so when we got into that part, I was so much more engaged with the content.
Yeah, there's character growth and development really pays off in this book.
It does, but you don't get hints of it. if you hadn't told me it was coming, I wouldn't have believed. Like I didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
I hoped it was, but I didn't see proof. It was not gradual. It was all at once at the end, I would say, which again is fine and really satisfying once it happens. But if I didn't have you, frankly, spoiling it for me, that I had that to look forward to, the book would have been really tough.
Yeah, it would have been nice to see that a little more gradual, a little earlier.
I just needed a hope.
Yeah.
I needed a hint of hope.
Well, and that's what Kevin's relationship with his grandfather provided for me. Like there is proof that Kevin can be a good person.
That's true. I guess I wanted to see maybe a little bit of change or the suggestion of change earlier.
Yeah.
Because again, once we get to it, it was great. Like definitely, because it built up for so long, was extremely satisfying. But I don't know. No, the book was funny enough. I would have gotten there. It just, I think I would have enjoyed the low moments more, knowing that there were high moments coming.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So everyone who's listened to the spoiler section, now you know. No, that was our reason to listen in the non-spoiler section, or reason to read in the non-spoiler section. It gets there. It does.
It does.
Maybe not coincidentally. That last chunk of the book, which happens to feature a lot of character development for Kevin, also features him traveling back in time. He doesn't know it. He thinks it's a parallel universe that's lagging behind by 50 years or whatever. 70 years? A long time.
I mean, that's still from his own personal timeline. That's still traveling back in time, in a sense.
Right. But he's told that it's a parallel universe. And then we later find out that it was actually his own timeline. He saves his grandfather. He thought it was a different version of his grandfather and saved him anyway. And then we find out that it was actually his own grandfather. And that was nice. He's a good kid.
Once you get there, yes.
Yeah. But that part was definitely for me. I liked him and Gwen trying to fit in to a World War II British battalion. Or Welsh battalion. Wait. Oh, dude, I am so bad at that whole chunk of geography, and I know that the words are very specific, and I do not know the specific words.
I mean, I think it was a Great Britain battalion.
Right. Like, I mean, obviously his grandfather's Welsh, but they were fighting with
Wales is part of Great Britain.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. I'm going to say something wrong and everyone's going to be mad at me.
Yeah, I liked the character development there, and I really liked when they got to the castle. Like, that was a lot of fun. But specifically, and this is a me problem, specifically them trying to blend in with the rest of the battalion made me really anxious, because I was like, well, they're going to be found out. And that's the kind of anxiety and a kind of situation that I don't enjoy, but that's a me problem. That's not a book problem.
Oh, and it's a me thing, that's the kind of conflict that I love.
Yeah.
That kind of tense interpersonal, not outright conflict.
No, thank you.
But yeah, like tension is the right word for it.
Yeah.
And him interacting with his grandfather, but trying to not give away the fact that he's his grandfather, that kind of thing I really enjoy. And I wish we could have spent more time there, which is 100% a me thing, because you would have died.
Yeah, I would have died. Yeah. Yeah. I get on pins and needles waiting to see how it all goes wrong. So I think this was about the right amount for me.
It didn't have to all be that, but for some reason, the time travel into the past, I guess, okay. There's parallel universes going through most of the book. And then at the very end, time travel turns out to actually be a thing. But it's basically time. They're traveling into a different universe where all the tech is very future, and that's where it's cyberpunky. So I'm just gonna use time travel as a shorthand. But I needed to give that long monologue to prove that I did understand what I was reading. I am just too lazy to say the whole thing, except I said the whole thing to prove that I understood it. Going back to the past is more compelling to me than going to the future. I liked seeing future Wales, but we spend a lot of time there and get a lot of world details that don't affect the characters in a personal way. Like even Gwen being a test tube baby is like one conversation, and that doesn't have a lot of ramifications. Whereas when a character goes into the past in general, but also in this book, it feels different. And this is another thing that I did not think about enough before this moment to actually be able to explain that. But I'm right.
I think that is not a general thing. I think that's a this book thing, where because of Kevin's relationship with his grandfather, there's a lot more human connection there in the past.
That's true. The stakes are much more personal.
Yeah, but I think that's very specific to this book and not to time travel in either direction in general.
I disagree. Not about this book. But I do think when someone travels forward in time, it's that fish out of water. Ooh, let's learn everything I can. Or be in way over your head, whatever. But when someone goes back in time, I think there's a lot more conceptual stuff going on. That's when you get, I think it is by definition more personal. Because when you're going into the future, that's not your reality, but the past is everyone's past reality.
Well, no, but I mean, you could be going to a part of the past that doesn't affect you directly or emotionally. You could be going into a future where you see like your relatives. Like, I think it depends on where you go.
Okay, that's fair.
And when you go.
That's fair. And I think in that case, it is not correct to conflate time travel, because Kevin does interact with his relatives in the future, but that's when it's a parallel universe, not his actual future.
Yeah.
And so I think this all loops back to, I really like character shit.
And I think also the reason why his interactions with his alternate reality family don't hit as hard is because he doesn't have the personal connection that he does with his grandfather.
Well, he does, but his uncle's an asshole. Another asshole.
Well, yes, but it's not. I mean, so yes, there is a connection there, but it's not a connection based on like
affection.
Yeah.
He only helps the corporation because they are going to kill him if he does not.
Yeah.
Even though the corporation is filled with his relatives. But then he gets to the past and he helps Isaiah, who at this point he thinks is a parallel universe Isaiah, grandfather Isaiah, just because he has that personal connection. He knows Isaiah, and that's him being kind. And it's to his detriment. He almost doesn't escape in time because he stops to help Isaiah. And then we only find out later that was actually his actual grandfather. And yeah, you're right. Parallel universes and a single timeline, I think, is conflating the issue. And it really all does come down to, I really like character stuff.
Yeah. I think what you like about it is the personal relationship and how that affects the action more than
any time travel commentary. Yeah. You're right. And again, time travel commentary isn't even fair because half of this book is parallel dimension travel. This book does a lot.
It does a lot.
And then Kevin punches his uncle, his real uncle, his home world uncle in the face, and it's the best.
That was a very satisfying moment. Seeing Kevin learn to stand up for himself against these relatives who have kind of, browbeaten him, and I don't want to say taken advantage of him, but
they would if he had an advantage to take.
Yeah. Seeing him learn to stand up for himself just felt really satisfying because he's come like he had come so far from the Kevin that we meet at the very beginning of the book.
And they're all assholes.
And they are all assholes.
And it's always nice to be victorious over an asshole.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if this is a pet peeve or a words are weird, or maybe my pet peeve is because these words are so weird. Sarah, I browse recipes online. That's a normal thing to do. Most people spend 90% of their brain power planning food, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the comment section, or even the titles sometimes. And that bothers me more because I can't avoid it.
I don't read comments.
So I'm talking about Reddit, where you kind of can't avoid them.
Oh, okay.
But I've also seen recipes with these words in the title. So they're unavoidable, and my complaint stands. For some reason, saying, oh, yum, that's fine. Like the word yum as an exclamation point doesn't bother me at all. But using yummy as an adjective is like nails on a chalkboard. I was a little bit more expletive in our notes. That was unnecessary. I was very mad when I wrote that.
Yeah.
Also, the word tastes, if something tastes good, that's fine. If something is tasty, get the fuck out.
I don't mind is tasty as much, actually. But yummy, it has to do with infantilizing words. And it just feels so unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like, unless you're talking to a little child, you don't have to call something yummy.
No, there are so many other words that mean the exact same. Just say delicious.
Yeah,
Like,
or good.
what? Yeah. Well, okay. Good eggplant parmesan recipe sounds
Okay.
hilarious in my head.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe as a description,
Yeah.
A recipe title.
I'm going to keep my complaint to recipe titles because you're right. You don't have to read comments depending on the platform. And so it's unfair to complain about.
In that case, I agree. Tasty eggplant recipe bothers me in a way that saying this eggplant recipe is tasty doesn't.
So on Reddit, people will make a post that is, this eggplant recipe is tasty, and then link to the recipe. And so it's the title of the post. And so you're still forced to see it, and it still bothers me.
Mm. Yeah, on its own, that doesn't bother me. Like as a sentence, divorced from context, It doesn't bother me. As a post title, I don't like it.
Yeah, no, it's
because it doesn't give you enough context. I mean, I guess
you're posting about it. It better be fucking good.
Yeah, like I think that's the thing. Like, if you're using it as the post title, like, yes, it should be good. You shouldn't have to tell us that it's tasty. We can infer that.
Yeah. Otherwise, why are you sharing it?
Yeah. But if you're talking about a recipe that someone made, like, then this recipe is tasty. Here, try it. Like that. I don't mind.
I still think tastes good or just was good. That's why this is the pet peeve corner. It's a pet peeve for me. Now, the word yummy, empirically bad.
Yeah, no,
we're dying on that hill.
We are agreed. We are both dying on that hill.
That's not a pet peeve. That's just a bad word. For adults speaking to adults. Again, of course, context matters. But yeah, tasty is still a pet peeve to me. But no, I agree. It's so unnecessarily childish and gives nothing of communicative value. You're not telling me anything with either of these phrases. Again, if it's a comment, it's like saying, yes, I agree. Okay, sure, fine. You're right. Okay, you're right. That's less annoying.
Yes. See?
But using it in any title capacity, it's like,
I agree with you. It's unnecessary in a title.
It's cutesy and gross and blah.
I'm sorry. I don't disagree with you.
Am I a hypocrite? Because I will say, oh, yum, all the time. I don't think so. That's a different part of speech. It's completely different.
Well, you're also not using that as a Reddit title.
Right.
I'm assuming.
No, that's true. Yeah. There are a couple of different categories. I would say food words get it pretty bad. Body parts get it really bad. But just words that have childish options is not the right word. Euphemisms?
Alternatives?
Yeah. Words that have childish alternatives that just, if you are speaking to an adult peer, is not the right choice ever.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Fiction Fans.
Come disagree with us. We're on Twitter and Instagram at FictionFansPod. You can also email us at fictionfanspod@gmail.com.
If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and follow us wherever your podcasts live.
Thanks again for listening, and may your villains always be defeated. Bye.
Bye.